Welcome to the Coliving with PadSplit Podcast, where we talk to successful PadSplit investors and have them share their secrets to success, not only in PadSplit, but in other facets of real estate. This podcast will help you expedite your learning to be a successful investor in the co-living space. We are your hosts, Ray and Orianna Nunez. Show us some love by subscribing and sharing so we can continue to bring on amazing guests.
Hello and welcome to the Coliving with PadSplit Podcast. I'm your host, Ray Nunez, and
Orianna Nunez.
And today we have Grant Barlow here. Grant's here to kick knowledge. He has a couple pad splits, and he has some experience on fix and flips. So he's here to explain a little bit about his start into investment real estate, how he transitioned from valet parking and limousine driving to growing his portfolio on the platform and doing long-term rentals, and all the way down to what his future might look like. So stay tuned for this episode of the Coliving with PadSplit Podcast.
You don't want to miss this one, guys. Subscribe, like, share, send us love always. Stay tuned in.
Hey, Grant, welcome.
Grant, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Thanks, brother. We're your first podcast.
Yeah, never done anything like this. I've been told I have a face for radio, so
we're excited to have you here. Well, listen, I know of you through Ray.
Okay.
But I would like for you to share with our audience a little bit about yourself.
Okay.
How did you get started in real estate, right? Because I know you're in real estate.
Yeah.
But give us the who you are.
Mm-hmm.
And let's just start from there.
Yeah. This is kind of silly. Obviously, I'm nobody special. So I think that's the number one takeaway. I think anyone that starts down a path and stays at it long enough can achieve it.
Yeah.
Can get to it and can do it. And I think that's more or less my story. Is I've always been an entrepreneur at heart, right? I've always had those visions and those dreams. I've always had those goals, and I got into a few different things that didn't work out, and I kind of stumbled into real estate. So, quick backstory. So my dad, he's actually my adopted dad. I was adopted when I was younger, but he had bought into a bill collection company, and me and my wife were in college. We're in school in a little small town in Utah, and he bought the area of Las Vegas for this small bill collection company.
Interesting. And
so I made the decision. I was in school trying to get my business degree, and I decided to drop out and move my family. My small family at the time, just had my son. And so we moved down to Vegas, and we were there to launch this bill collection company. And the owners, it was a new company, the owners started litigating, and they never got the license for Nevada in place. Yeah. So in the meantime, I started just parking cars. I knew a guy who owned a valet company.
They make money.
Yeah.
Valet makes money.
He makes money. Yeah.
They don't. He does.
He makes money. But he owned a very great guy, by the way. But he owned and he was a family friend. Mm-hmm. He owned a valet and limousine company in Las Vegas. So,
hello.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
So I started parking cars, and just going back to the apartment, just me and my wife and my son, and they just never got licensed. Eventually, I started driving limousine, and I was just waiting for this license to come through.
Right.
And finally, I ended up running like a relay race with my cousin's brother-in-law. Too much information there. But that's Carl Bassett. So you know who Carl is. So Carl Bassett is the number one franchisee in the HomeVestors system.
Got it.
So, and at the time, he was pretty new to HomeVestors as well. So this is 2014. He started in HomeVestors in 2012. Mm-hmm. So him and his then business partner, had just won Rookie of the Year. 2 years prior, they were kind of like the up-and-coming stars in HomeVestors, really hard workers. And I ran this Ragnar relay race with them. And he was just kind of picking my brain, like, what are you doing? What are your goals? And he saw that there was some kind of synergy there. And he's like, man, you kind of remind me of my younger self. He's like, have you ever thought about real estate? And I had no idea
what
real estate was.
You know? What is that?
That's awesome.
I we all know, but we don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. So I was like, well, I'm parking cars right now and driving limousines, so I'll interview.
Right.
So I showed up, interviewed, gave me the job like right away, and that's how I started. 2014 awesome. Started working for Carl Bassett in Las Vegas.
Fantastic.
Yep.
How did you make it to Florida out of Vegas? And
yeah. So from there, starting in 2014, in 2016, I was the buyer of the year. So I was the number one buyer in all of Home Investors
awesome.
In 2014. So for all the franchisees, I bought the most houses.
Wow.
And in Home Investors language, a buyer is essentially acquisitions is sell, right? Mm-hmm. Sells. So after that, after 2016, I was getting a little jumpy. Again, that entrepreneurial spirit, I was just getting a little bit jumpy. So I decided to partner with Carl in a franchise, and I moved up to Salt Lake, Utah to run my own franchise up there. So I jumped up there, was running my franchise up there, and then in 2018, Carl came up and talked to me. He said, hey, why don't you come back to Vegas for a year, and then we're going to launch a fund, and we're going to go out to Florida, and we're going to buy houses, and I want you to head that up. So
awesome.
So that's what happened. So moved back to Vegas, moved my family again. 2020, right in the middle of the pandemic, we trucked 4 days across the country when nobody was moving. The freeways were empty.
That's a nice trip. That's a really nice road trip, actually.
Yeah, well, I had 3 kids, and my wife was 8 months pregnant. So it was a trip. It was a journey. Yeah, it was a journey. We get 2-3 hours down the road, have to pull off.
Right.
Wife would need to go to
restroom,
the bathroom.
All of it.
Second, the wife
kids are
stops
tired.
The car, the kids all want to get out. So we were able to do about 6 to 8 hours
a day
freeway time on the day. A day, that was it. So it took a while, but
you made it.
Yeah, we made it.
And you started doing really a lot of buy and hold here, or you're focused. I know. So you started with Carl Bassett. What was the main strategy that you guys were doing? I know Home Investors does everything.
Yeah.
But there was one that it was ideal for you guys at the moment more than others?
Yeah. In Vegas, Carl's main focus, especially in the beginning, was definitely wholesaling. So, that's what we focused on. He was also flipping a good amount as well and doing pretty high volume. So
yeah, really
high overhead, very expensive marketing, and just churn and burn. Right.
It creates quick cash, essentially.
Yes. Yep. But both of us wanted to create something a little more permanent.
Right.
We wanted to create a future. And so both of us kind of wanted to create a rental portfolio. And while I was in Vegas, this is probably the year of 2016, so 2015 to 2016, Carl actually kind of took a little bit of a step back to go build a rental portfolio, and he bought a bunch of rental properties in Reno. Awesome. And so I saw him doing that, and I wanted that as well, right? So that got me a little bit jumpy, and so when we came out to Florida, the focus was to build a rental pool. So immediately we raised capital a couple different times with a few different entities, but immediately just started buying properties for long-term rentals and, buying it with hard money, refinancing them.
Right.
So just the standard BRRRR method.
That's awesome. That's how we acquired most of our PadSplit properties, actually.
BRRRR. Us too.
Us as well. It's been good, even though it was hard with the high interest rates, but, it actually worked out for us. Okay. I love that you're in Florida now. What is the market that you focus on? Because Florida has 5 different markets in a state, right? Yeah. We have so many different price points here. And I know that the appeal to live in Florida is something that everybody in the country wants to be a part of. How did you guys determine where to focus best, knowing that there's so many different options when it comes to the real estate strategies and price points as well?
Well, I'll jump in too, because I remember early conversations. hey guys, it's Tampa or Jacksonville and Orlando. And then they're like, no, we like option D better. So this is a good education tip on, we're in a lot of Florida today, but back when we were only in 3 cities.
PadSplit.
Correct. What made you guys pick this market in general? Not for people to jump in there too, but what gave you guys the confidence when assessing the market? And then what did you look for? And then what city did you guys actually pick?
Yeah. Are you saying for PadSplit specifically, or just why did we land in Orlando?
No, PadSplit.
Okay. Yeah. So I would say for, a couple things. So first I want to talk about how the East is different than the West, right? And we had to learn that the hard way.
Oof.
Teach us.
So
it's a complete different universe.
Teach us.
So if you go out West, and if you've ever been in an airplane, you fly into Las Vegas and you look down, you see nothing but dirt.
Right.
Right. It is empty. So there's a Las Vegas, and then you drive for 100 miles before you get to even a small town, right? So, it's not that extreme, but it can be out West. It's pretty empty.
Yep.
It's very empty. And so that part of it, I guess, made us a little bit ignorant to how sprawling it is here. And so when we're out here, in Vegas, if we got a deal in Pahrump, which is right there by Vegas, right? We're like, oh, it's Vegas, 30 minutes we're there. It's not a big deal. Well, the problem with Florida is there's 1,000 Pahrumps.
Yes.
And they're everywhere. It doesn't stop.
No.
So every time you comp a house, you're like, yeah, but it's just right outside of this town. I've been there once. So it's not a big deal, right?
A whole different city.
And there's no clear borders, right?
No.
You drive and there's a sign up from one house, there in between 2 houses, there's a sign that says entering Eustis, Florida, right? And you're like, oh, I changed cities apparently.
And counties.
And counties.
You said apparently,
right? Yeah. So that was and still is a little bit of a hurdle for us, because it's out West, it's easy. Your focus, your market, because you can't
mess that up.
Yeah, you can't. You're not buying cactus, so
house.
We're house buyers. So, but there's houses everywhere here,
and it's almost like we cannot be without those small towns neither.
Yeah,
like it's so important in the economic health of Florida, all those small towns around it.
Yeah, and we've made pretty good money in these small towns too.
Yeah.
So it's hard to say no. It's hard to know when to say no, because you're like, I don't think I want that. And they're like, well, how much? You're like, oh, here we go again. You know what I mean? So there's just
can't say no.
Too many people are saying no already. So now your competition shrinks, which means your deal gets bigger. Takes a little longer to sell. The agents are pretty hit and miss. It's a little bit tougher. The crews are hard to get out there, but the money, it's there if you're willing to work for it.
Oh, you're buying far, bro.
Yeah, we
you're buying far.
We buy in a big footprint. Yeah, we really do. It's you can't say no to money, right?
And you're an acquisition agent. Like, that's what you're good at, is negotiating and acquiring. So you can't say no to a deal.
Yeah, that's
tough.
Get it. So with PadSplit, I think that's what it came down to for us, is we had just started marketing in Gainesville. Now we had some other rental properties around with different entities that we wanted to convert to PadSplits: Orlando, St. Pete, Tampa. But we had just acquired a bunch of properties that we wanted to convert into rentals in Gainesville. And you guys weren't there yet.
Yep.
But we had these properties teed up. The market was starting to teeter, where the interest rates were starting to jump. We were a little bit late to our refi, and we're looking at the numbers, and we're like, we either sell these or we turn them into a PadSplit, because it's just not cash flowing. So that's how we landed in Gainesville. That's how we launched Gainesville. Is it was like, look, we just got to make this work, or otherwise we're gonna sell these things. So
what was the appeal to Gainesville to you guys, outside of the price points? Is there anything else?
Yeah. I mean, I think just in general, if you look at the markets where flippers do the best, right? Where real estate investors in general do the best, right? This is a very generalized term, right? Obviously, there's niches everywhere. There's people that will tell you high end's the best. There's people that will tell you buying vacant land in Mexico is the best, right?
Yep.
But New Mexico, sorry.
Yeah. I was going with
also Mexico. Listen,
I don't know anybody that buys vacant land in Mexico, but I'm sure they're out there, right? Yep. I'm sure there's a course you can find.
Yep.
So
they will sell the course.
But an acre in New Mexico desert is like $5,000, $3,000 to $5,000, right? And so there's courses on that because it's easy for people to get into. I actually hired a guy a while back he was marketing and mailing to those type of opportunities, right? But and I've also worked with people who feel like there's only money to be made in the high end, the luxury, right?
That's
because
right.
these people have money, so they're the only ones that'll buy houses, right?
That's right.
Yep.
But from my experience, and this is my opinion, right? And from all the people that I've worked with, and for what it's worth, I have bought well over 500 houses, right? I've evaluated thousands of deals. Got a rental pool of over 100 properties, right? So I do have some experience.
Just a little.
And I have talked with a lot of people.
Yep.
The places where flippers and real estate investors tend to do the best is kind of in that middle America, right? Yep. Kind of that sweet spot of, hey, I can buy a house for close to 100 and I can resell it for close to 300, right? In that range, those guys can crush it because when you walk into a house and you make someone an offer on a home that in current condition could sell for maybe 175 and you make them an offer of 140, it's not that big a leap because you make it so easy for them, right? But if you go into a house that's worth 700 and you make them offer at 450,
good luck. That's
a big jump.
Yep. That's offensive.
That's a big jump, right? And then if you get too low, now you're going into a house that might be worth 75 if it was fixed up. You got to get it for free.
Yep.
Because your construction budget might be $70,000. I mean, it's got to be gifted to you.
Yep.
Right. So I do feel like there's a sweet spot right now. Those markets where they're big enough to support some kind of volume, but the home prices haven't skyrocketed to the point where they're out of that range. Those areas crush it, And when we moved here, there was a lot of Central Florida that fit that. 2020, there was a lot of Central Florida that fit that bill, right? And it's getting, it's getting up there.
Yeah, it is.
Yep.
So, and Gainesville, kind of, we looked around and it kind of fit that bill, and so that's why we initially jumped into Gainesville and started marketing there. So,
makes sense.
Yeah,
makes sense. And we're kind of seeing that. Kind of with whatever's left over is like cocoa, out towards the coast. You don't really see that in Orlando. We're seeing like $300,000 price points and higher. Yep. So
we purchased our single family home about COVID time, and for us, 320 was like, oh, that's kind of high.
Yep.
And now you don't find anything for 350.
Yeah. Yep.
In Orlando Metro, right? It's like 400 plus is the minimum like entry price. Well, how did you guys decide to add PadSplit on your portfolio? Because you've done a little bit of all those strategies, and PadSplit seemed to be a little bit more newer. It probably has been always there for all investors, but not as appealing. What was the pivotal point that you guys were like, you know what, it's worth the shot. Let's use something and let's give this a try.
Yeah. I'll be fully transparent here. I can't take a lot of credit for that. So that was Carl.
Okay.
You're one of the no's.
That was Carl. I do, I'm a very inquisitive and visionary person, but I also tend to question everything.
Okay.
Maybe a little bit too much. And Carl's more the type where he sees something and he goes and he goes all in. And sometimes it doesn't work, but when it hits,
it hits really nicely,
And so he stumbled into PadSplit at a home investors convention and was like, guys, we got to get on this. And he started pitching it from day one like it was
his own,
the best thing ever.
It was his own, yeah.
And part of that was probably convincing himself, but also getting the team rallied and getting us convinced to it. And it was pretty apparent very quickly that it's the right thing to do. So right now we're in a wave right now, and we just got to ride that wave because it's definitely there's an untapped market here for PadSplit. So
100% agree with that. What was your noticeable difference? So when you did long-term rentals, did you work on the property management side of it as well? Or did you contract people to do the property management? Mm-hmm. What have you noticed really a difference between what you guys were doing and then now doing PadSplit?
Yeah.
Operationally. Because you think, okay, well, short-term rentals is very intensive. Short-term rentals, cleaning every 3 days. Mm-hmm. For your PadSplits versus long-term rental, are there much noticeable differences that you've seen operationally, and has it hindered your ability to scale up?
Yes and no. I definitely hear less from my property managers on single family, just a traditional rental, right?
Of course.
But I've hired the right team member who manages the PadSplits for me, and she just happens to fit that personality type where she's very organized. She responds quickly to the tenants, which I think is key. Yep. The PadSplit platform makes it pretty easy. It's pretty intuitive. It's pretty slick. They did a good job rolling this out to where, the communication's slick. It's easy to communicate with the tenant if there is an issue. A lot of those chats that they open are resolved within a few minutes. Sometimes it's just a silly question, but if you don't get to it, they can pile up pretty quick. So just having somebody that's super organized on top of it, and then incentivize them properly. So we have an incentive where if she turns over a property fast, she gets a little bonus at the end of the month compared to if it takes days, right?
Love that.
So if she can get a property from vacated to turned over within 24 hours, she'll get an extra bonus of $50 just on that property alone. And so, if there's a few rooms, which there always is, that turn over, that can add up pretty quick.
Yep. So, right. And all of your properties are mainly outside of Florida, also in Florida? PadSplits specifically.
So my properties are all here. Now, Carl has multiple partners, right? So he's a big player. He's got a lot of different partners. And he has ventures in Kansas City, Las Vegas, Reno, and a few other places. But my properties are all here in Florida. So Tampa, St. Pete, Orlando, Volusia County, Lake County, Marion County, Alachua County. So it's all here in Central Florida. So
is there an ideal, when it comes to PadSplit or when you're looking for properties, an ideal bedroom count that you like to hit, a sweet spot?
The more the better, right? The more the better. There's no question. We have a property that is, an absolute dud from every perspective besides PadSplit. This property probably should have been burned to the ground, right? But it has 10 bedrooms in it, and it's an absolute cash cow. It makes more money than all the other PadSplits, and it's worth less than most of them. So, and it's right here in Orlando in a very rough area, but it's very walkable. It's close to a bus stop, and it pumps out cash. It does a great job of pumping out cash.
ROI is crazy.
Yeah. So we went from being able to collect on that property. It was a single family. It had a 3-2 in the front, and in the back, it had a little 3-1 apartment. So the 3-2 in the front was like $1,500 a month. The apartment, I think, was like $950 to $1,100 a month. This is not a great area. This is pretty rough. And now, it can kick off $6,000.
Wow.
$7,000 sometimes. So it's
love that.
The difference is staggering. So
yeah,
love that.
Yeah.
And you're also building some sort of equity.
Yeah. Let's talk about equity. So what are your guys' thoughts? I have a question for you. So
ask away.
I've always thought, I really feel strongly that there's a window here, just like Airbnb had a window, right? The people who jumped on Airbnb early really reaped the benefits because eventually the market caught up, the financing caught up to where it's easily financeable. Lenders are used to it. You know, that's been the hurdle with PadSplit, right?
Right.
And as we get to that point with PadSplit where lenders become more comfortable, maybe they're even writing 30-year notes on converted properties to PadSplit at scale, and we can get a few lenders doing that at competitions and scale that, I think the market for an occupied PadSplit is going to just skyrocket. So now a home that, if you convert it back to a single family, would only be worth, you know, $350 as a PadSplit, it's going to be worth $450, $500, maybe even $600,000 because of the amount of cash that it kicks off. So I foresee that. That's my opinion. As long as the laws stay where they're at and everything goes well. But what are your, like, have you guys seen that at all?
We discussed this recently with another host of ours.
Oh, did you?
Where for him, when he underwrites his PadSplit, he's selling it as a commercial building because of the cash flow that it's generating. So it's the most reasonable thing for him to sell his property at a price where it's valued at the cash flow generated.
Yep.
To your point, because it's acquired so much value on what it generates that he wouldn't even underwrite it as a traditional single family home.
Yeah.
And I agree with that statement. We're generating those multifamily returns on a single family home asset through that multi-income with renting by the room.
Yep.
So these homes are valued at significantly higher.
Yeah. I mean, if PadSplit starts trading based off of cap rates, these things are going to get expensive really quickly.
Yeah.
And if you don't get on it early, you're going to miss the boat because then as it starts to scale, the local governments are going to catch up to it. And now you're going to have to get a special PadSplit permit, like an Airbnb permit, right? And you might be grandfathered in early on and it's a lot less expensive. Late, this is going to be more expensive. It's going to be hard. You're going to have to get approved.
Right.
These things are just going to get harder and harder to accumulate. So as many as you can get early, I feel like is going to be the golden ticket, as long as they don't come in with some crazy one fell swoop legislation that just kills it, right? Which would be devastating. But
I think it's difficult to shut down properties that are for affordable housing.
I agree.
So I think that's a good thing, obviously, for investors. I do know I know a person that does a PadSplit loan, but your keyword was at scale.
Right.
So with his product, it seems to only go through him for the most part, and not just any mortgage broker can just, do a loan for you. So I think that adaption will happen, and I think it'll be swiftly for the most part, where, they can do it, and this is how they're underwriting, and this is how they're assessing the property. I think the hurdle we're going to hit is seeing a single family home as a commercial income producing property.
Right.
And
we got to be careful there too, because do we want it to? If it does, now we're going to run into multifamily laws that are associated with that. So we got to be careful there.
Yeah.
I don't know how that's going to work out. I'm very interested to see.
On the zoning.
Yeah, there's some things that are coming in the future that again are going to make this difficult. And so again, I just believe the people that are jumping on it now are going to be extremely happy. And in 10 years, you might meet people that are like, there's no money there. It's not worth it. And it's because they're trying to buy what I bought for $300, $350. Yep. They're trying to invest at $600. And I think they can't get the permit and, things like that. So.
I think that's the important piece that's not talked about as much as we're in Orlando. In Orlando, we have tons of jobs coming. They're doing construction. We're expanding out towards Tampa. Tampa's expanding out towards us.
Yep.
With that being said, Epic theme park is coming for Universal. They're going to add another 14,000 jobs.
Yeah.
Just in one park.
Yeah. That's
with the hotels and the park and all the different jobs. So,
and that's just one theme park, let alone everything else, let alone the, I don't want to get political, but the politics of why everybody's just flooding to Florida as well, right? That's why we picked Orlando in the first place. If you talk to, and there's a bunch of different programs and people who analyze markets and give you advice and things, but we were noticing that there was a lot of really smart economists and experts that are predicting Orlando to be the next major metro, to be in the class of like in Atlanta, or the class of it's Miami, Atlanta, New York, LA. You're going to think Orlando in there as well.
I agree.
And so
we feel it.
Oh yeah.
As locals, we already feel that energy of the city growing to be like so big.
Yeah, absolutely.
But the prices that we're charging weekly today is going to look cheap in a year. Right. The cost of houses that we spent today is going to look cheap when people figure out, let me start buying pad splits turnkey. Let me start buying pad splits to renovate in a year. Those rates, because of the cost of the real estate, are going to have to naturally go up because of not just like interest rates at where they're at, but then also inflation. Yep. So by default, cost of house goes up. My weekly rates are going to go up. Affordability is going to decrease in this market, and we're jam-packed in Florida, Central Florida, with people. So I think just the way that it plays out, we're going to end up becoming a more expensive market, and we're going to have a more important need for affordable houses, which would result in PadSplit host I got in early and have the most amount of real estate in the area to do well. Yeah, next year and the year after and the year after.
Yeah.
So to your point, like when even Florida was affordable, it's a little bit less affordable today.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Like from
a lot of bit less. Yeah. A little bit less.
Not a little, a lot. Right? From purchasing a house to even renting. Yeah. Right? A studio cost in Central Florida is about $1,800 to $1,900 a studio alone. Right? And those income earners they just can't even do that. So that also is, it's a reassurance as an investor to know that you're making the right decision in this strategy.
Yeah.
Seeing the high need that the city and the state has right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, I think you're dead on. I think that I always run into people who really doubt real estate, right? And they're like, man, what are you going to do if the economy goes down? And it's just, it's almost laughable because, and it's not that I don't think it might not go down, right? There's a chance it does. But if real estate dips to the point where they think it might, and they're so stressed about that, do they not realize everyone's screwed? If real estate really did what you think, that means the dollar just crashed. Yep. If you think that's coming, then what's stopping you? Go crazy right now. Do everything you can right now to expand and grow and build, because when that hits, you're not going to be the only one. Everyone's screwed. It wouldn't matter if you had it in the stock market. It wouldn't matter if you had it anywhere, you know? I mean, maybe gold aside from that, right?
The only exception.
And some, maybe, this is where the crypto people start really chirping, right? Yep. But, if the market tanks, it's not, first of all, it's not going to be because of real estate, because real estate isn't growing the way it was with the same parameters and it's way more regulated. So it's going to be because of something else, maybe the stock market, maybe the currency. If that happens, we're all left. Yeah. So what's stopping you? Like it wouldn't matter if you're working in a well rig in North Dakota or you're flipping houses. So you're going to be screwed either way. Yep. So you might as well flip houses and build wealth. So.
And at that point, if that's the case, those savvy investors will take that opportunity to acquire even more.
Right.
And wealth will be created by so many in that perfect opportunity for those people that will seize it.
Yep.
So if you don't want to do it now, prepare yourself for that moment.
Yeah.
So you can be in that advantage to acquire a lot more at a, cheap price.
Yeah.
If it happens.
That's one of my business partners. He timed things extremely well. And, I don't know the full story. If it was just a matter of fortunate events. He's a very intelligent guy. He's an accountant by trade and, very smart, very, very disciplined and knows his numbers, right? And he had a big sell event right before the crash. And so he was just sitting on cash, 2010, 11, 12, 13, 14. I mean, those years were crazy, right? So he said he was, and he was in California. So he said he was going into the courthouse and buying 20, 30 houses in a day at pennies on the dollar. These banks just couldn't get rid of them quick enough. And, it's always easy to point at somebody and say he's set, but he's set.
Today he's set.
So he's set. So
you're set.
So
we're doing good with 47 doors. I can only imagine someone having a portfolio like that. It's amazing.
Right.
Yep. So how's your portfolio generally doing today?
Do you want to share with us how many doors on PadSplit do you have?
The doors on PadSplit, I'd have to pull up my app to see.
All right.
But, we've got 10 properties. So, a couple of, I think Carl has more than that, right? So Carl would include all these properties and plus another probably 30. I don't know what other PadSplits he has, but
if it's six average rooms, but I doubt you guys are aiming for 6.
Yeah, I would say like
around
more
60
plus
doors.
60 doors.
Yeah, we're probably right
plus.
there. I think that's probably right.
Okay.
Right in there. Like 60 doors, maybe close to 70, but right in there.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Occupancy good?
Occupancy was at 92%, but as we onboarded more properties,
it decreased.
You get that decrease.
Yes, you get that dip and it hurts. You're like,
we've dipped all the way down to 85. It's killing me. It's like 85. Come on, like
we're so spoiled.
so
spoiled.
People have no idea.
We're so spoiled. We're like, what is this 82%?
Yeah,
this is crap.
And for somebody that's looking to get into PadSplit, the other thing about that 85 that's tricky is that it's a different 85. On a single family, you're either occupied or you're empty.
Right.
And when it's empty, you're still paying the bills.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, PadSplit, you're never empty. 85 means 1 bedroom out of my 7-bedroom house is empty, right? For a short period of time, which means 6 other people are still paying rent, which means I never have to come out of pocket.
Nope.
My mortgage is paid, insurance is paid, taxes are it's all paid. So, of everything that we're doing right now, I would say PadSplit is doing the best. I think that's a fair assessment. Obviously, flipping houses is getting a little bit gritty right now. Not to say, it's a little tougher than it was a year or two ago, right? Yep.
What are you seeing the challenge on that? Is it on the acquisition or is it on the sale itself? Like sitting on the market a little longer? Definitely,
once a property's been flipped and we get it listed, they're definitely sitting a little longer than they were. Absolutely, that's a major issue. And it's interesting because the prices aren't necessarily going down. And so you're going to evaluate a house. People always say, it's always price. It's always price. Sure, it is, right? If I offered you a $100,000 house for $20,000, then yeah, it's a price issue. You'd take it at $20,000. You wouldn't take it at 100, right?
Right.
But it isn't in the fact that it's not like people are listing these things where they wouldn't appraise and appraise rightfully so. That's the thing too. People get confused about the difference between now versus 2007, 2008. Those houses were appraising higher than they should have appraised at because people were getting phony mortgages that they weren't qualified for.
That's right.
Well, today, these houses are appraising at numbers that people can actually get qualified to buy and they should be able to buy rightfully. So they're not overvalued. These homes are not overvalued. It really is a hard time because the legislation is in such a way where people are having a hard time qualifying for it, right? Yep. Or even if they do qualify for it, maybe they don't want it because they're sitting at a 2% interest rate, 3% interest rate.
What's the incentive in selling?
Why would they move, right?
And pay 1 at 7%.
Exactly, right? Even if they were qualified. So now you have people that are fully qualified to buy your home. Maybe it's a better home than they currently live in, but and they can even afford it, right? But when they look at their finances and they're like, yeah, I can afford it, sure, but why would I jack my mortgage from, $2,200 to $5,800 a month? I mean, it's just crazy. So,
yep.
And that's not factoring all the overhead expenses that you have as a homeowner.
Yep.
Because homeownership is great, and I think we've talked about this as well, but they don't educate first-time home buyers on the responsibility that also homeownership comes into play with. Maintenance, repairs. You still got to do a lot of the overhead costs, and that's where a lot of people now find themselves in icky situations because they could have covered the mortgage payment, but what about everything else?
Right.
And keeping up with the property, and the roof now is leaking, and it's $15,000 for a roof.
Yeah.
And all those additional things that come with home ownership, right? Which kind of is the opportunity for us to help in that situation. Yeah.
I feel pretty strongly, and obviously everyone has their own strong opinion about the real estate economy and where it's going, where is it headed, and if it's going to tank and if it's not. I feel very strongly that it's not. And I mean, you even look at, when was it, a year and a half ago, when they were lifting the
interest rates.
They were lifting the laws around stopping the foreclosures, right? And everybody was out there on their podcasts. Oh, everybody's going to get foreclosed on now. There's going to be this huge wave. We saw a little blip. These people are actually qualified to own these homes, people. Yeah. They actually have the income, and they were vetted properly, and the U.S. changed the laws around that. They're qualified to be there. They're not losing their houses because they can't afford it.
Right.
They can afford it. They just had to adjust their income differently. And yeah, there's some people that can't. There's foreclosures. There'll always be foreclosures, right? We saw a tiny blip, right? But it's not nothing at scale, right? There's not some big wave of foreclosures that's taking over the country.
Yep.
And I don't see that happening. I really don't, unless, again, the whole economy tanks. Yep. In that case, we're all effed. So, again, I mean, what's stopping you? It's either you're in or you're out. And right now, I don't see why you would stop yourself from trying to grow right now. So
that's correct. And if interest rates do eventually go down further, you can always just refinance your property at, from the interest rates that you are today. If you're so concerned about, hey, interest rates are too high today. It's like, okay, it's only 7%. It's only 6.5% dependent, but with the exit strategy that we're utilizing, we're still making money with the higher interest rates.
Yeah.
I'm still doing cash out refinances on our properties, buying them wholesale or at discounted rates, doing the rehab, refi, pull money out and continue to move forward. But that's similar to what you do. Walls go up after.
Walls go up after. Yep. It's the only way we've been able to figure it out. I talked with Carl a few days ago, and he said that there is a lender that he just recently spoke with, a pretty big lender. I don't know if I should say their name, but who talked to him about, I don't want to blast them in case it's not 100% set in stone they can do this, but they're a very reputable lender. And he talked to one of the higher-ups that said that they are comfortable lending on pad splits after we convert them. So I think we're going to test that on one of them here coming up, and we'll see.
It's probably the same person.
I love our community because of that, though, because we tend to mobilize and really try to figure out what's working, what's not working, trailblaze. Yeah. So like the people that are really doing it, and I've spoken to a few of them, they're talking to lenders proactively. It's not that PadSplit is necessarily doing that, and we are, but the hosts themselves are mobilizing and going, okay, well, this lender's working, share it. Or, hey, this furniture company's working, share it. And it tends to spread at the end of the day. So I do enjoy that about our community.
Yeah. I was at an Airbnb with my family over the weekend, or this past week, and in New Smyrna. And the Airbnb was like a 3-story condo unit, and there was 2 of them. So it was a duplex, right? And you shared the pool in the backyard. And the other family that was staying in the other side, we bumped into him at the pool, and he's a product manager for some Midwest bank. So he's a product manager, product creator. And I'm like, well, what does that mean? Right. Right. You hear
what
these buzzwords. I'm like, well, great. Well, what do you actually do? So, I come up with loan products, creative loan products for this, it's like a mid-sized Midwest bank.
You're like, say less.
And I immediately,
you're like, say less.
I'm like, I'm telling you guys right now, the first person to launch this at scale and partners with PadSplit is going to rake it in. They are going to explode.
It's going to make so much money.
Lenders on the top of that list.
Yeah, charge 8.5. If you can give us the product, just allow us to just buy a home and go straight into PadSplit. if you can allow us to do that, it's going to
jump. It's a game changer.
Yeah. It's going to jump.
I agree. And they would benefit. Oh my God.
Yep.
Just alone the lender, I don't know if it's the same one, but we know 2 lenders that understand PadSplit. They're both host. Okay. So that alone is different. When you can talk to someone that is...
Are they a private lender then? So they're like a private individual, or is it a company?
No, it's a company.
Okay.
It's a company.
Yeah, they're brokers, essentially.
Correct.
Oh, they're brokers.
They're brokers.
Which is different, right? Because talking to a broker, they like to give you the nod, which we talk to a lot of brokers who they see our volume and they see our size and the scale and all these, all these different economies we're in. And they say,
appealing.
Oh, yeah,
that's appealing, of course.
We can figure it out. And then we get down to underwriting. They're like, well, actually, does it appraise?
It's not going to work out.
Is the appraiser going to write non-conforming multifamily? Because if he does, it's not going to work, right?
I need to make an introduction.
Do that.
Because they could go up. So the conversations I've had, if it doesn't have a closet, it's just a room. So they do give guidance and tell you, hey, don't do more than 5 bedrooms. And so they have what they found success in is in panel of appraisers and have a pool of them that they're able to understand, hey, this is a non-conforming property.
Yeah.
And it is going to be utilized as a pad split, but they're able to look at it and say, okay, well, these are offices, these are dens, and those are bedrooms, but this is still a single family home, and it'll pass that portion of it.
That makes sense.
And they'll tell you not to make extra bedrooms because then it makes it more difficult if it's more than that to find comps.
Yeah.
And then at that point, then they're able to lend on the property. So I'll connect you guys.
And there might also be a little factor in there where, when you're appraising a home, you want to see that the kitchen is done, it looks right. You want to see the master suite, right? So if you eliminate the master suite, you might get dinged on your appraisal a little bit, right? Yep. If you add a bunch of bedrooms where there would have been a beautiful living room, that appraisal might just tick down a little bit. So you just got to be a little careful there too.
Yeah, they'll factor those in and adjust accordingly. But the advantage of them, like I was mentioning, is that they're host. So they can speak on the product way better than someone that is like getting educated from an investor that's needing the product.
Yeah.
So them going through the experience themselves is the advantage of applying that to their own product and being able to explain it and sell it as well.
Right.
We'll definitely introduce you.
Okay. Awesome. That'll be super helpful. Because I think we would be, and we're at 10 properties. If we had solved this by now, I mean, we'd be at 30.
Right.
Really would, so.
Right. I know. It's a challenge. Growing pains.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. So there's so much in your business, but what are you leading towards? Like, what's the goal for you, I suppose, currently? And then in what direction are you heading in with your properties? Like, is it meant to just hold? Are you looking to get to a certain amount of properties? What are you going towards?
Yeah. The original goal was to get to 300 single family rentals. And as the interest rates have gone up quite a bit, we've scaled that back a little bit. And so as of right now, the goal is to get more solvent, right? So just creating more revenue. For example, on our single family rental portfolio, it doesn't cash flow. I mean, we have 100 properties, right? It doesn't always cash flow positive on those 100 properties. And people need to be aware of that. When you do the Burr method, we have equity, right? I'm not complaining, right? Yep. I'm not saying my net worth has absolutely skyrocketed, right? Because I have a lot of equity in all of these properties.
Right.
So the equity's there. The values are increasing. My debt is decreasing, but it's not liquid. And when that bill comes due, it's still due. And if you don't generate enough in rents, which, on a typical single family home, you're looking anywhere from 150 on the low end to maybe $600 positive cash flow per property. You probably average closer to, $300, something like that, $250, $300 per property. Some of that will go to taxes maybe, right? Some of that goes to repairs. You have to replace a roof. It might kill the 100%. Profit on 10 of your houses for that whole year. So you got to be pretty vigilant on that side. And again, your equity's still there. So, but if you're just looking at your IRR, right? Like, hey, cash out, cash in, what happened? There's losses there pretty frequently on a single family rental portfolio. So, getting our single family rental portfolio solvent and cash flow positive right now is probably my number one goal. Number two goal, adding pad splits. Number three goal, we're actually switching back to wholesaling a little more. Mm-hmm. So when I first moved out here 2020, we stopped wholesaling altogether. We were keeping everything, and we were buying like crazy. At one point I had over 43 construction projects.
Wow.
So, we were buying and rehabbing like crazy. We had crews just flying around everywhere.
Wow.
Right?
43 projects. That's crazy.
And it was a mess, right?
Takes a lot of trust. We had 7 projects at the same time, maybe 2 different crews, and it was a headache. So I can only imagine finding enough crews to do that many jobs.
Yeah. Constantly interviewing, constantly meeting people. Even when I signed a contract, not signing, paid a deposit for somebody to start. Mm-hmm. I'm still meeting other guys over there. Just, hey, get me a bid. I want to see like how these bids come in and how organized you are, and if this is something you could help me on another project maybe. So just constantly interviewing construction, contractors and trying to find people. It's a full-time job. So all the different pieces of our business end up being a full-time job. And I run a pretty small office. We don't have a lot of people. For the volume that we do, we're shockingly lean. Mm-hmm. So that's a lot of work. A lot of time away from the family.
A lot of project management.
I have 4 kids at home, and it's it's a lot of time. Sometimes they just don't see dad till 8, 9 o'clock at night.
Right.
Yeah. Sacrifice.
Those project managements are hard. I mean, and finding those good, reliable contractors, to your point, can be a gem. Yep. Like, it's just so hard to find one that stays consistent, delivers good quality.
Yep.
And, is a good quality of your team. So that's impressive.
That's been an interesting transition with PadSplit too, because certain contractors are just cut out for different certain products, right? Sure. We don't use the same contractor on a $60,000 trailer,
right,
that we would on a $500,000 house. So finding the right contractors that can convert these pad splits the way that we want them to be converted, not going overboard, but also making it respectable. It's been a little bit of a transition for some of our contractors too. So, do
you treat your pad splits almost like a fix and flip to some degree, or because you say that there's a difference? Finishes? Yeah, on the finishes, because it needs to appraise.
Yeah,
ultimately. Mm-hmm. So you are kind of pseudo treating it like a flip. Your loan kind of acts like a flip,
right?
But you don't want to throw everything in there neither,
right?
Like something that is a high end finish or something. So how do you treat going through the rehab process?
Yeah, so I think anyone who's trying to do the BRRRR method, what you want in the end is as little amount of your money stuck in the property and out of your business as possible at the end, right? Mm-hmm. And so, I would say trying to navigate and project out where the appraisal will come back if I do certain things, and making that dictate what I end up doing to it. So I have some pad splits where we completely remodeled them, and we got a really high appraisal, which allowed us to cash out a good amount. And we have some pad splits where we bought them, and we didn't do a ton.
Lipstick?
Just put a little lipstick on, and we knew it would appraise where we needed it to, and it worked out. So, not to brag too much, but that's something that I have become really efficient at, is I can very, very accurately now, I feel very good about it, project where something's going to appraise. And I usually, I'm hitting
pretty spot on
at a pretty good rate now after all these years. So that tends to help.
Love that. That means you're becoming a Floridian.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
He knows everything about Florida now. All the little towns.
It's so funny talking to local Floridians, because you're like, you never left your own town, have you? I drive the state, 5 days a week
more than you.
So I'm like, hey, you realize that's like 10 minutes up the road, right? Yeah. There's a town up there that you never heard of. Are
it's
you
cool down there.
Mount Dora? Yeah. Mount Dora is really nice. That is true. That is true.
It's absolutely true.
What are your greatest advice that you would give someone that is working to become a PadSplit host on the renovation side? So you're so hands-on that part. What are your good tips and tricks that you would want to share with someone that is working on their PadSplit renovation?
I think just going at it with the appraisal in mind, I think is the best advice I can give. 200 amp breaker, right? So if you're buying a house that doesn't have a 200 amp breaker, just know you're going to be tripping breakers and you're going to have upset people. So you might as well just factor that in right now. The AC's got to be functional and big enough to suit that many people. I would say you'd be surprised at how comfy a house can look once it's furnished. So don't go overboard. I see a lot of people going overboard, and I don't see people paying extra for those overboard houses. I don't know. Maybe you guys see differently, but I just don't really see it. So if you need it for the appraisal, great. But I can see a home that has a 15-year-old kitchen in it and old appliances, and they're getting the same amount per room, because once you get inside your bedroom and you have a nice bed and a good setup, not a whole lot changes there, right? So location and don't go overboard, I think, is more important than getting in a bad location and going way overboard on it. So, like, for example, the property that I have that I was telling you about that is a serious cash cow in downtown Orlando. It's in one of the worst areas. It's not in great shape. It doesn't look pretty at all. And people want to live there. It's always full. People are paying the money to be there.
Is it 200-ish a week, or is it below 200?
It's below 200.
I'm just checking.
It is below 200, yeah. So that's another side of it that I haven't really delved into. You guys probably have more expertise on that. And I think right now it's not a factor, right? Just like early Airbnb. Think of early Airbnb. If you had a tent, right? You throw it up, somebody was there, right?
Renting, yeah.
You had an empty bedroom, you throw it up, somebody was going to rent it, right? I think that's going to transition. And when we talk about barriers to entry in the future, I think that's going to be one of them, is it's going to get to the point similar to Airbnb, although not to the same extent, where creating the right amenities within a bedroom, the right ambiance is actually going to get
comfort. Yeah.
It's going to actually start to separate people, right? In the beginning of Airbnb, anybody could rent anything at any time.
That's right.
Now, the people who make money on Airbnb, they buy a mansion and they create a rock wall and a slide and they go crazy with it. And the hands-on is insane, but they only have 3, 4, 5 of these, but they kick off, 20, 30 grand sometimes a month, right? And so these people are like really super hands-on these couple of Airbnbs that they have. And when you try to scale Airbnb right now, your occupancy rate drops, right? Your 30% occupancy rate. The properties,
we hear that.
They're not working because there's too many of them.
Too many.
Yep.
They're easy to finance.
Too many. And now, to your point, you need to have that experience, that wow. And the wow is not, an Instagram wall. Everyone has that now.
Right.
It has to be a car rental, that it's luxury. It has to be a boat in your property that they can utilize. It has to be something that really makes your property stand out.
Yeah.
Because everyone has a pool home in Florida in an Airbnb.
Yep.
That's no different anymore.
Yep.
It's the slides. So it's the rock to climb. Like it's those type of things.
And now you're no longer a real estate investor. You're almost an artist, right? You're literally you're Joanna Gaines, right? You're going in there and you're like,
you're so right.
How do I make this room beautiful?
Harry Potter room.
I'm terrible
Those
at that, right? That's not
Airbnbs.
me. I can't do that. So
me neither. I mean, to your point, I think that location is going to be very important, especially more important down the line. I think your downtown Orlando property down the line is going to flip a little bit to become more expensive depending on how close to downtown Orlando, but as Amway adds its event center
and UCF grows
and that UCF campus grows, and then that whole zip code starts to change, then that's going to now become an ideal place for housing, because your only options would be higher priced condos or apartments.
In downtown, right? Yeah. Versus the other side of I-4.
Even the same thing that's happening near Pine Hills, borderline College Park, is that College Park is
District
going into Pine Hills by Packin District. Now there's a YMCA, Publix, Foxtails, and all of that being built.
Have you seen that?
I haven't.
Oh my God.
I haven't spent a lot of time in that area
Grant,
of Orlando. So.
You will be shocked onto seeing how different it is. We just drove it a couple weeks ago.
Yep.
We couldn't believe what we were seeing.
So you're talking like right by the Amway Center, like right just north of it right there?
You take John Young just all the way down past Colonial, and as soon as you pass Colonial, you're supposed to be seeing, what you're supposed to see is before you get to Rosemont, is supposed to be industrial, like Cadillac dealerships and stuff.
I'm familiar with that area, yeah.
That whole area, they took down a lot of the warehouses. Now it is upscale apartments. And a Publix is there now.
It's beautiful.
Plus a bunch of restaurants.
Nice.
But what it's doing is bridging the gap between
Pine Hills. End of Pine Hills and College Park.
Correct.
Okay.
It's a complete different.
I've got a rental right there on Silver Star Road, so I'm happy about that.
So
it's right on Silver Star.
I'm happy about it. I bought on Silver Star. If that was a PadSplit.
We were looking 2 years to buy over there, and there was nothing available.
Grant probably bought it before we got to it.
Yeah, you probably did. Dang it.
So so when you start to look at areas for like a PadSplit, I like to say look at proximity to who you're trying to attract. Right. So if you're trying to do, let's say, Windermere.
Or the airport.
You wouldn't do Windermere proper. I'm not going to put a PadSplit in Windermere.
No.
Your neighbor's going to hate you.
Yep.
But could you do
Winter Garden?
Could you do it in Winter Garden? Could you do it in Gotha?
Mm-hmm.
Could you do it in one of those areas just outside of it?
Yep.
Buy in those areas, because it's going to continue to grow outwards. Because at some point, Gotha is going to, they're not going to change it to Windermere, but it's going to be expensive just as
bleeding
Windermere.
Out a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So I always tell people, look for areas like that. Downtown Kissimmee's growing outwards. I think they're called the Technology District or something.
Oh, really?
It's the medical.
Medical City.
The medical city.
Is that towards? That's more towards Celebration or
it's downtown Kissimmee.
Oh, okay.
It's a whole different thing.
Where Valencia College is on 182.
Wow, huge development coming in there.
Interesting.
Medical City. So now they're allocating. I don't know what the radius on land is in this, but specific for medical technology. And they're...
Is it Advent Health or who is it?
It's Advent Health and plenty of others.
Oh, wow.
It's crazy. Look into it.
Yeah.
Huge opportunity there also for the future, because the development that is coming there is going to be mind-blowing for all of us. It's a complete innovative development based on medical field.
So best advice that I would generally give, and you kind of hit on it, is location. And the earlier you can buy and plan out, like obviously everyone's not privy to expensive assessments of cities, but if you can see where they're put in apartment complexes, it means that they're planning for a lot of people to live in an area. Right. So as you see Ocala starting to put that up, or Gainesville start to put up apartment complexes, and you start to see development, kind of like Mineola of sorts. It's like, well, who's going to be able to afford these houses if you're working at Publix?
Right.
Or Walmart? And then plan to buy houses that are older in the vicinity.
Yeah.
And it's also like, if you see a Walmart coming in, Walmart is there for a reason. They don't just open up a shop because they feel like it.
Yeah, they're doing some
research. They're very strategic on why they open a brand. So that's also big indicators when you see those large retail operations. There's something behind it too.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, so I'd say, on a macro side of it, it would be location. Picking a property that has proper parking, right? Things like that. And then kind of on the micro side is going in on your rehab, making sure that you have the proper electrical supply, you have the vents located in the right areas. One of the big ones for us is we want all of it to be scalable, because we don't intend to do one or two, right? We want to get to 30, 40 of these, right? So, and I'm not saying doors, I'm saying homes, right? So, making sure that the door locks are all on the same system and they can be accessed via Wi-Fi. So if we need to give someone access, it's all unique to them. We don't have to worry about showing up and resetting things. So just keeping the maintenance side of it low, where you don't have to have personnel on site every single day, which key locks has been a big factor for that. Internet. We're starting to now put timers in all of the bathrooms and putting the fan and the light on the same switch.
Okay.
With a little motion sensor. So it's like, hey, you walk in, it kicks on, or you push the button, it kicks on, but in 30 minutes, it's going to kick off. And the fan and light turn on at the same time, so less mold build up, things like that. So there's a lot of little teeny micro things that you can do to make this business better. But yeah, on the macro side of it, location is going to be the number one most important thing.
I like the pro tips on the sensor stuff.
Yeah.
What locks do you guys use?
I don't know the exact brand.
That's fine.
You'll share with us.
I thought you shared it with us.
I know. I mean, we do.
That's probably true.
Yeah.
I like to.
What locks do you use?
I don't get sponsorship money.
That's right.
Not yet.
But no, I just like to ask, just in case you start at something and then head to something else, because operationally we all kind of learn from each other.
Yeah. The locks that we have, they're battery operated. We haven't had a ton of issues with it. They all sync up to an online login, so you can go by property and by door. Have it separated out. You can give, I think it's like up to like 15 different codes per lock.
Beautiful.
So the front door, all the exterior doors, and your bedroom door are your code. And when that person moves out, you cancel that code, that person out of it, create a new person with all their own unique passcodes. So the guy in room 1 on the front door is poaching, he's punching a totally different code than the guy in room 2.
Right.
Love that.
And it's easy for them to remember. If you do have a sticky situation where you need to lock somebody out, you don't have to show up and lock them out. You just punch it on the computer, and their access no longer works. So, things like that. It's just that has been a big hurdle. I've seen a lot of people try to do like the cheaper. They're trying to save $100 or whatever per lock, and they're punching in these little, manual punch locks. And I think there's a security risk with it, and I think
huge
that it's labor intensive.
I have noticed that in PadSplit, when you go cheap, it costs you a whole lot more.
Right.
So, to your point earlier, don't go super luxury, no, but go reliable, go durable.
Yep.
And if it's $50 difference, go with the $150 versus the $99.
Right.
Because it will cost you rechanging that lock again, someone getting out there to do that, and now it's costing you $300.
Right.
To replace it versus the $150 for one-time fee from the beginning.
Yeah, and I mean, I think back to my previous comment too, as PadSplit continues to scale, and now you have competition within PadSplit itself in a certain area, suddenly those amenities will start to make a bigger and bigger difference. Right now, there's not too many to where it's making a giant difference, right? People are like, a room's a room. Right? I got a room, great.
Yep.
But in the future, there is going to be a whole separate animal where people are like, do I have a mini fridge? Do I have a TV? What else comes with it?
We're starting to see that happen already.
Yeah. I'm not surprised.
Yeah, we're starting to see the TVs and mini fridges like almost like a standard. And I would also kind of allude that to a lot of the Airbnb hosts are bringing their experience into this universe. Kind of downgrading it a little bit, but also adding more to it.
Right.
And we're seeing a lot of them. $150 more for a fridge, right? We bought ours from Costco, like $100. And that alone made a big difference.
Right.
Maybe not on the pricing on your room, but the experience for them to stay longer. Yeah. Which ultimately that is the play.
That's something that we need to get more analytical on, because right now I would say we're kind of the budget room,
Yep.
So if you looked across my pad splits, I'm not necessarily trying to chase the high end. So it'd be interesting to run the numbers and see what the extra investment for the return would be on it, because I think that will it will be more of an issue in the future than it is right now.
No, I agree.
You should send a survey to your whole, all your members.
Do you want a TV?
Oh, I don't want to put that in their mind.
I don't want them to know.
Who's going to say no? Yeah.
No, of course.
Would you like a mini fridge and a TV?
Of course.
Obviously.
No, that would really disturb me.
What would you pay more for, a TV or a fridge, and how much more?
Yeah.
No, but I mean, I could see how
they're going to be like,
bad.
wait, that was an option? They're going to be back on the PadSplit app. Hey,
wait, this room
there's
has
one across the
Never
street
mind.
right here. Are you kidding me?
It sounded good in my head.
Scratch that off.
As I said it, I'm like,
Never mind.
Yeah, don't ask nobody.
Yeah, we'll let it become an issue, and then we'll address it. So,
all right,
something to consider for the future.
Yeah.
But you're right. I think it's not as needed. I think it's just starting to be like, oh, that's nice that I have that needed. But now it's not everyone has it. Why my room doesn't have it type of thing.
they're still going to pick location first. They got to be in a certain
100%.
area, right? So,
They want to be close to their jobs.
Yep.
Because they don't want to still commute 40 minutes away.
Yep.
If they have something that is 10, 15 minutes away from work.
Yep.
That's a fact. Location trumps a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's real estate at the end of the day.
Yes.
Location matters.
Yep. Yeah, for sure.
Lastly, I mean, I kind of want to ask, we never touched on your acquisition skills.
Mm-hmm.
He's a beast.
Yeah. I mean, what tips? Because the money's made in the acquisition. Like, so if you're getting a PadSplit, you're buying it retail, then obviously there's some money loss. Even if you're burn and you're paying more money than an investor that can get at a cheaper price, there's some money lost. So there's always room where you're losing some form of money because you didn't acquire properly.
Right.
What are some like tips out there for people? Because I know the stick is get it at what, 60 to 70 cents on the dollar?
70 cents on the dollar.
And then you're refinancing, and I agree with you. When I look at a deal, I'm looking at it based off the refi.
Yeah.
It needs to be at best case scenario, 80% or 70% of value.
That's for a burr.
And then you have to work backwards to figure out where you can get to. But what tips do you have for people that are out here searching for properties? Because you are going to sell them probably a deal or two moving forward that are looking for wholesale deals that might make sense as a PadSplit.
Right.
But before that, then,
what
tips do you have for people on acquisitions?
Yeah, I think acquisitions, you know, it's always going to be very simple in my mind, but I see people making the same mistakes every time. And bottom line is you got to start by working backwards, right? The very first number you need when you look at any house, I don't care where it is, I don't care what your strategy is. If you're going to resell it, rent it, PadSplit it, Airbnb it, the very first thing that you should look at, in my opinion, is not income. It's what is it going to be worth when I get through doing what I'm about to do to it.
After repair value.
So your ARV, get an ARV. Once you can get an ARV set and then kind of get a fair estimate of your rehab, you'll find out pretty quickly if it's a deal. Now, that's so ingrained in me because I don't buy it at market prices, right? Now, I know there's investors out there that are fine. They're like, hey, no, like my income's there, it cash flows beautifully, I'm happy with it, right? The problem is unless you have extremely deep pockets and you don't plan to scale, then that's not a recipe for success.
Right.
Now, if you want to scale, you need as much capital to stay in your business as possible. And the only way to do that is to go, and the best math, I mean 60, 70 cents, the best math is 75% minus repairs. So what's my ARV? Times that by 0.75 minus my repairs. How close to zero can I get that, right?
Yeah.
Because anything extra is money out of your business, right? So that's really the math. It's very simple. ARV times 0.75 minus repairs, because your loan in the end is going to be at 75 cents, right? Or sometimes less, right? But any dollar less than that is money out of your business.
Yep.
And there's so many people who are like, yeah, I'm going to get to 50 PadSplits, or I'm going to get to 10 PadSplits, I'm going to retire. And then they go out and they find this home that they think is perfect, and they studied it for 3 months and it sat on the MLS. And you're like, there's a reason why it's sitting. It's overpriced. And you took way too long to analyze that deal, and you talked yourself into it eventually.
Yep.
So it should be, look at 100 properties
Yep.
and do the math fast. Hey, ARV is what? 75% is what? repairs are what?
Grant, but
now how much am I coming out? Because that's the bottom line.
Everyone's ARV is so different.
Everyone's ARV is different, but everyone's appraisal is going to come in the same.
The same.
And that's where
the appraisal will be the same.
Not every evaluator is.
I agree.
And I know I'm touting myself a little bit here, but I'm very good at accurately depicting where this will appraise.
You hit it, because what happens with a lot of wholesalers, and unfortunately, they are trying to sell a deal where the ARV is like, where?
Right.
Come on, your comps are not even.
I'm
using pending comps, and I'm like, what type of measure is that?
Price per square foot is another option.
Yeah, I mean, price per square foot is so silly. Like nobody, no appraiser.
I'm gonna show you the smallest house and do price per square foot, and multiply it against the big ass house.
Right. Yeah, price per square foot. It's so fun. I mean, when I even talk to a realtor that says that, and sometimes I even talk to brokers that do that, and it's just laughable. It's like, you've been doing real estate for how long? Like, when? And unless you're in D.R. Horton's neighborhood where they built 30 of these models, price per square foot, just throw it in the garbage. It doesn't apply.
I agree.
And in PadSplit, it's never going to apply because you're not buying in these neighborhoods. So, it's your ARV is what it's going to appraise at, and that is based off of like for like. Yep. So, find a home that's very similar and see what condition it's in, and compare that to your home, and that is tough. It's not. It takes experience. It really does.
It takes experience.
But you can be within 10, 20 grand, right? And if you feel yourself talking yourself into going higher, even though there's not a single sell to support it, then you're going to shoot yourself in the foot. And I think that's the other problem too with ARVs is anytime I talk to somebody that talks price per square foot, my ears just turn off. Anytime anyone talks to me about a listing, my ears turn. Listings do not matter. It's the last thing. I don't even look at listings.
I agree.
I never look at listings.
I agree.
I don't even.
That's what you want.
It's listed for, so
yeah.
I don't know what it's going to close for. It means nothing to me.
Exactly. And even pendings. I'll glance at pendings to see if I see a trend. I'll glance at listings to see if there's going to be competition. So I get my ARV from the sales.
Right.
Then you glance at pendings. Where is it trending? You glance at the listings to see
what other are pricing for. Yeah.
You're like, hey, maybe it's trending down. Maybe I had a little high there.
Right.
3 months or 6 months.
Now, 9 times out of 10, and people don't realize this because they don't do this at scale, but 9 times out of 10, when you look at the cells and you go in that order I just said, cells, come up with your number, write it down. That's my number. Look at your pendings and look at your listings. Every single time, especially if you're new, you're going to have a hard time not going back and raising that original number. Why? Because the listings are always higher than the physical sales because people take less than what they listed at. So, and unless you're in, that 2022, right? When things were going crazy, right? But as a general rule, it's always less. So people are looking at the listings. They're coming up with their number. Then they're trying to find cells to support that number.
And they can't find it. They can't find it.
Yeah. Or they find it, and it's just
they'll
one
justify
outlier. And it's
got 9 months
crazy.
ago.
Yeah. And it's just got something where you're like, okay, but they have a giant pool. Or they, like, yeah, but maybe if you make it nice. No.
There's no maybes.
Different, right? Their lot's twice your size. They're on a lake. I mean, what are you doing? So, I would say that's what you see quite a bit. And the wholesale community is ripe with these people, right? Because they need to argue that thing as much as they can. So, but, it's
we're going to get under Grant's list.
What is that?
I mean,
your buyer's list when you start wholesaling.
we wholesale a few right now. So if you guys want to look at a few, we're very reasonable. When we wholesale a deal, I mean, there's meat on the bone. We don't.
That's the whole point.
We're not trying to make all our money on one deal.
And
right?
those good wholesalers make money because they have repeat customers, because they know you are reputable and you're a good source.
Yep.
That's the difference versus the one wholesaler wants to make 40 grand, burns the buyer.
Yep.
That wholesaler is dead.
Yep.
We're coming to you. Q3. We're buying in Q3.
Yeah. When we started wholesaling at Mass, it's shocking how little buyers we actually turned to, because you establish a relationship with someone, and as long as your numbers are coming in fairly accurately, consistently,
they're going to keep coming back.
You send it to them, and you give them the breakdown. And I've had plenty of wholesalers just take my word for it. They're like, yeah, we'll take it. They're like, well, because they know I'm spot on.
Yeah.
Right? So, and then I never have to market it.
You don't even have to market it.
Oftentimes, when I go to buy a house, I know who the buyer is already, right? I'll go into that buy appointment, and I already know who's buying this house. Like, I know where they need to be at, so I know where to put my numbers so that they can buy it. So
that's a fun operational work.
I love it.
Yeah.
When you have to blast it to everyone through MailChimp.
Grant, we started wholesale, so if you wanna hire us.
I don't know if I want to wholesale.
We got burnt out from wholesaling, but maybe I'll revisit with him.
Wholesaling, it is such a rat race.
It is. It's a hustle.
There is so much overhead and so much work if you want to do it at scale, right? And so you got to feed the beast. You got to churn and burn. And the second you hit slow down, I mean, it bites you quick.
It does.
So wholesaling is a different game.
It is.
It really is.
It's a grind. You're as good as your last transaction, but you always have to plan for what you need to be in marketing so that you continue to get more deals. It's insanity. It's fun. It's fun. The chase is fun.
Yeah.
But
the hunt is exciting. It's exhilarating for
sales appointments, and when you're on a group chat with people and trying to sell it before the other people do. But again, it depends on your sales org. But
I would say wholesaling is what keeps our doors open.
Yeah.
I want that to be PadSplit in the future, which I think it will be.
It will be.
I think it will be. I think PadSplit will be the residual, and I think that's the key. I want income that's residual and perpetual, right?
Yeah.
And I think that PadSplit, from my perspective, is going to be the most likely source of that, right?
Yep.
So
I agree with you. That's what we're in it too.
Yeah.
Grant, thank you for being here with us.
Yeah, thanks.
So you know what? Leave us with your last one. Biggest motivation in your life, biggest thing that keeps you grounded, keeps you going, because you running an operation of the level that you do is not for everybody.
And projects,
right? You do a little bit of everything in this type of scale. How do you keep that going? What's your
Oh man, I think that's easy. You know, not to get too emotional. I'm kind of a crier, so everyone knows.
We love that here. We love that here. What do you mean?
Joiner, bro.
We love that here.
No, it's too easy. I had a rough childhood, really rough childhood. I actually ran away from home when I was 14 years old. So and I had a couple of really cool families and individuals that kind of took me in and helped me along my path. And so, a lot of that, I think, anytime I think about these different people who have come into my life, that have given me the opportunity to be here. I came from a very poor town, very poor area. My mom had 14 kids. I grew up in a little single wide trailer, right? The boys had a mattress that we leaned up against the living room wall, a queen size mattress, and we'd flop that down. That was our bed, right? So, I grew up fairly poor and, kind of got out of that environment at 14 years old and kind of made my way through. So, just knowing that there's people that have given me this opportunity makes me feel extremely blessed. And oftentimes I have to sit back and think like, man, why me? Right. Oftentimes I don't deserve it. Sometimes I do, but oftentimes, more times than not, I don't. Right. And so, just keeping that in the back of my head. And then obviously my family, my wife. Have you met Brooke?
I haven't met Brooke yet.
Okay. She wants to meet you guys. So
we'd love to.
Yeah.
Yes, please.
Yeah. So my wife, she's a superstar, best mom in the world. And then my kids, my kids are everything to me. It's the future. They're my future. And it's just such a joy to see them and to learn with them and grow with them. I'm learning every single day. I learn from them and I learn with them. And I love that part of being a dad. It's just learning with my kids, seeing what things kind of get them excited and motivated and trying not to screw it up. And
there's no manual.
No,
there's
there's
no
actually too many manuals, right? There's too
You're
many
right.
manuals.
Do this, don't do that. You should try this, do that.
Right. And it's so funny because, you know, I have 4 kids and they all are so different. And that, you know, it's funny because people say these kids just come out of blank slates. It's so not true. I mean, these kids are so unique and so different, and I'm pretty consistent across the board. And they're so different. And so just trying to find ways to help them find their place in the world, that motivates me every single day, you know, and hopefully giving them something positive to look up to with all, you know, the baggage and the crap and the faults that I have, hoping that the lasting impression with them is something good, you know, that motivates me every single day. So
that's beautiful. That. And I think you deserve all those opportunities because you've also played your part. I think that's the difference. I think a lot of people are granted opportunities. They don't seize it and they don't run with it. You did all of that. You said, let me show you.
Yeah.
And you proved it. So I think that's why you deserved all those opportunities and everything that comes to you here in the future.
A lot of it was I was too dumb to know that I shouldn't have been trying that. And, you know, as I've gotten smarter, I've seen the limitations that come with increased intelligence because you stop trying. You're like, well, that seems impossible. And I see the work that's going to be involved in that. And that doesn't sound like fun, right? But when you're a little bit naive and ignorant to the work that's about to be unloaded on you, you're more optimistic and apt to jump on things and run with it. So, you know, I think that's a little nugget I've always tried to remember is like, hey, don't outsmart yourself here. Just jump in, go to work. Like sometimes it's just go to work, just start. You'll figure it out.
You'll figure it out.
Yep.
That's something that we're practicing.
Love it.
So if someone wants to reach you, maybe get on your buyer's list, even though I know you don't have a list because they sell before. But if someone's interested in potentially buying a PadSplit from me in the future that's off market, how can they reach you?
Yeah, so you can reach me directly. My email is grant.barlow@sunrockfl is in Florida.com.
We'll put it on the description too also.
Awesome.
So it's easy for you guys. But honestly, he's going to start wholesaling. I know he's going to find some really good stuff. So thank you for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thank you, brother.
Appreciate it, guys.
You.
All right.
That's it for today. Thank you, guys.
Thanks for tuning into the Co-Living with PadSplit podcast hosted by Ray and Orianna Nunez. For more exclusive content and community updates, join our Facebook group and follow us on all social media platforms. Stay tuned for more episodes.